let's jump right into it. Welcome to This Explainer. If you've ever felt just totally wiped out by a screaming toddler, trust me, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're going to completely flip the script on how you view your child's meltdowns. We are moving away from all that frustration and, instead, equipping you with some highly effective, empathetic tools to handle these intense moments with total confidence. Because, as our source materials so brilliantly points out, these messy, loud moments, they aren't interruptions to parenting. They literally are parenting.
I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine being dropped alone into a super crowded foreign city. Nobody speaks your language, you have absolutely no clue what the rules are, and everything around you is just incredibly loud, confusing, and totally overwhelming. And then on top of all that, someone hands you the blue cup instead of the red one. I mean, you'd probably want to scream too, right? Well, that is exactly what a tantrum feels like for a small child. We see the hitting, the throwing, the collapsing in the middle of the grocery store aisle. But underneath all that behavior is almost always something much deeper. It's fatigue, it's hunger, or it's simply emotions that are just way too massive for a tiny, still developing nervous system to actually process.
And that brings us to this really massive paradigm shift. Think about the old instinctual way we usually react. Oh, they're giving me a hard time. They're just being manipulative or stubborn. But the reality is actually completely different. They are having a hard time. Most tantrums happen because a child's emotional brain has completely taken the wheel and their logical thinking brain has, quite literally, gone offline. A toddler just doesn't have the neurobiology to say, "Excuse me, I'm feeling a bit overstimulated right now." They cry, yell, and kick because it's a developmental reality. It's not a character flaw, and it is definitely not a personal attack on you.
Which leads to a really fascinating comparison, one that pushes back hard against a lot of modern parenting pressure. We often put reciting the alphabet early up against emotional resilience. But here's the absolutely crucial point. Before age 3, learning to regulate emotions is vastly more important for your child's future than memorizing any academic skill. Why? Well, because learning ABCs is a cognitive task. That can easily happen later. But the brain's emotional architecture, that is being actively built right now, in these early years. Seriously, anyone can eventually learn their letters. But learning, hey, I feel angry, I can calm down, and my feelings are safe here, that becomes the entire structural foundation for all their future mental health, resilience, and adult relationships.
And that brings us to this incredibly powerful quote from the text. It says, "When a child is drowning emotionally, correction is rarely the first lifesaver. Connection is." Just think about that for a second. If someone is literally drowning in a pool, you aren't going to stand on the deck yelling swimming instructions at them, right? In the same way, yelling "stop it right now" across the living room just doesn't work. Instead, you've got to move closer, get down on their physical level, soften your voice. You really have to offer that connection first, because your gentle presence is going to work where harsh lectures completely fail. You have to pull them out of the water before you can teach them how to swim.
Okay, let's just slow down and pause here for a second, because this next concept is an absolute game changer. It's called co-regulation. This is the actual biological mechanism of how kids learn emotional regulation. They do not learn it by being sent to their room to figure it out all alone. They learn it by borrowing the calm nervous system of a steady adult. Basically, your calm becomes their calm. When you take a really slow, deep breath, your breathing teaches their body how to breathe. Your steadiness teaches them safety. Seriously, one slow, deliberate breath from you can literally change the temperature of the entire room. You're acting as the external regulator for an internal system that's just still under construction.
Now, this illustrates a really common point of confusion. A lot of folks think that if you're calm and empathetic, you're basically just being permissive. But that's not true at all. Permissive parenting means there are zero rules. And honestly, kids actually feel really unsafe when there are no boundaries. Calm parenting, on the other hand, means validating their feelings while simultaneously and strictly limiting their behavior. You can absolutely say, "You are so angry right now, but I will not let you hit." That's not weakness. That is emotional intelligence in action. You are holding the line, for sure, but you're doing it with love.
So how do we actually translate all this into our daily routines? Like, how do we stop these biological tantrums before they even start? Well, a huge number of meltdowns happen simply because a kid's basic needs are just out of whack. They're hungry, they're tired, or they feel rushed. So look at these daily rhythms. Similar wake and sleep times, getting morning sunlight, predictable meals, calm bedtime routines, and just generally reducing the chaos during transitions. Why does this work so well? Because to a child, predictability feels like safety. Creating these gentle, consistent rhythms acts like a biological shield against tantrums.
When their little bodies know what to expect, their brain is just so much less likely to panic. But look, kids are kids. Tantrums are still going to happen, even with the absolute best routines in the world. So let's shift into our practical toolkit for when you're right in the heat of a meltdown. The ABC method. It's super simple and easy to remember, which, let's be honest, is absolutely crucial when your toddler is screaming and your own stress levels are going through the roof. Step 1 is acknowledge feelings. Step 2 is boundaries with warmth. And step 3 is choices. Let's break these down one by one so you know exactly what to say when the storm hits. All right, step A, acknowledge. When their thinking brain is offline, finding words is incredibly hard for them, so you lend them yours. You say things like, "Are you sad? You really wanted to eat that piece of dog food? You're feeling so frustrated." By giving them the right words, you're helping your child feel deeply understood. You're validating their very real, very good feelings, but without validating the bad behavior itself. You're basically telling them, hey, your feelings are okay and they're safe with me, even the completely ridiculous ones. And you know what? This simple acknowledgement often diffuses like half the anger right away. Which brings us right into step B, boundaries with warmth. This is where you stay totally grounded, calm, clear, and firm. No hitting. I won't let you throw that. Food stays on the table. You are setting a non-negotiable boundary, but notice the approach here. There's no yelling, there's no humiliation. You're essentially acting as this sturdy, unshakable wall that they can safely push against while they try to figure out their overwhelming emotions. They need to know that your boundaries are strong enough to hold their biggest feelings without you breaking down or retaliating. And finally, step C, choices. Children, and especially toddlers, absolutely crave a sense of control over their lives. When they feel totally powerless, that's when they melt down. So give them small, simple options. Do you want the red cup or the blue cup? Do you want to walk by yourself or hold my hand? These tiny choices completely satisfy their deep developmental need for autonomy and can almost immediately diffuse a power struggle. It's a remarkably effective little trick to just keep in your back pocket. It pivots their brain away from what they can't do and gives them power over what they can do. Now, let's talk about what happens after the storm passes, or when they actually do something right. As adults, we often accidentally spotlight bad behavior with a whole lot of drama. We get big and loud. Why did you throw that food across the room? But here's the secret. Sometimes negative attention still feels rewarding to a child simply because it's still your full attention. Instead, our sources advise staying totally neutral when something negative happens, like zero drama. Just say, looks like you're done eating, and move on. Save all your biggest, most exaggerated, warmest energy for the positive actions you want them to repeat. Wow, you waited so patiently. I absolutely love how you asked for help. Ultimately, all of this leads us to the deepest lesson of all, modeling regulation yourself. Your kids are constantly watching how you handle frustration. When you feel overwhelmed, what do? Here's the absolute gold standard for modeling regulation. Pause, breathe, step away briefly if you need to, return calmer. By doing this, you're teaching emotional mastery without ever having to give a single lecture. And here's a really beautiful, surprising fact. If you lose your temper, which, let's be real, we absolutely all do, repairing that mistake by saying, I'm sorry I shouted, I was really upset, actually teaches them more than if you had reacted perfectly in the first place. Kids don't need perfect parents, they need real parents who know how to repair. We're going to wrap up today's explainer right here, but before we go, I want you to let this final thought really sink in. One day, your child is going to speak to themselves the exact same way you spoke to them in their hardest moments. Your voice quite literally becomes their inner voice. So, when they are overwhelmed today, what inner voice are you helping build for tomorrow? Keep that in mind the next time the storm hits. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this incredible material, and I will see you in our next explainer.